The Carol Shields Prize is essentially the US and Canadian version of the Women's Prize for Fiction. This is the one where North American readers don't have to worry about if the books have been released yet. And if you're the lucky author to win this, you get $150,000 US, which would buy you a luxury barista-made oat milk latte every morning for the next century. If you're shortlisted, you only get enough money for 8 years worth of coffee, or 1 week if your name is Henri de Balzac, who is not eligible for this prize because he's French. Not because we're racist towards the French, although that is fun. Your tower's not even that big. You fashionably dressed consumers of very good quality butter? No, you need to be from the United States of America or Canada to enter. Also, not being dead helps. You need a book published in the year 2023 to be in this race. Finally, Balzac is a man, and to be in this prize, you need to be a woman or a non-binary writer. The long list of 15 books has been announced. The shortlist will be announced on the 9th of April, and the winner on the 13th of May. Let's have a look at the books. I will let you know that I have read 3 of the books and DNF'd a further 3 of the books on this year's long list. Cocktail by Lisa Alward. A girl receives a bedtime visit from a drunken party guest who will haunt her fantasies for years. A young mother discovers underneath the wallpaper a striking portrait that awakens inconvenient desires. A divorced man distracts himself from the mess he's made by flirting with a stranger. These intimate, immersive stories explore life's watershed moments in which seemingly insignificant details, a pot of hyacinth, a freshly painted yellow wall, and the most chance of encounters come to exert a tidal pull. Set in the swinging 60s and each decade since, Cocktail reveals the schism between the lives we build up around us and our deepest hidden selves. This is a collection of 12 short stories, and it is getting overwhelmingly positive reviews. I have never heard of this book before. Regular viewers will know my opinions of short stories versus novels. And I must be honest, when I looked this up, I was definitely hoping that this would be a novel because it sounds great. But it definitely sounds like a book that could be the exception to my rules when it comes to shorter fiction. Burnam Wood by Eleanor Catton. Of the books I've read, this is my favourite. I would be very happy if this book won the prize. It is simply fabulous and it deserves to win something. Burnam Wood is a guerrilla gardening group in New Zealand that has caught the eye of a billionaire investor. Both parties are up to no good. Burnam Wood is breaking the law, but doing so to provide food security and to help the environment. Billionaire Robert Lemoyne is quite legally pillaging the earth, hoping that nobody will find out. Actually, it may not be that legal. Catton is able to show us the hypocrisy and the legal problems at the centre of today's environmental movement. Burnam Wood is also a Shakespeare reference, and Catton is masterfully telling her story in a very modern Shakespearean style. Of the books longlisted, I think this is probably the most widely read, and I think it's an absolutely brilliant roller coaster of a novel, exciting, emotional, and intelligent. I love this book, and I think that this is a very safe pick as the winner, and it's just nice to have something like this book on a long list, a book that you know is good quality, that is going to appeal to a large audience. Dancers by Nicole Cuffey, a provocative and lyrical debut novel following a trailblazing black ballerina who must reconcile the ever-rising stake of her grueling career with difficult questions of love, loss, and her journey to self-liberation from a sensuous new voice in fiction. At 22 years old, CC Cordell reaches the pinnacle of her career as a ballet dancer. When she's promoted to principal at the New York City Ballet, she's instantly catapulted into celebrity, heralded for her inspirational role as the first black ballerina in the famed company's history. Even as she celebrates the achievements of a lifelong dream, CC remains haunted by the feeling that she doesn't belong. As she waits for some feeling of rightness that doesn't arrive, she begins to unravel the loose threads of her past. An absent father, a pragmatic mother who dismisses Cece's ambition, and a missing older brother who stoked her childhood love for ballet but disappeared to deal with his own demons. Soon after her promotion, Cece is faced with a choice that has the potential to derail her career and shatter the life she's cultivated for herself, sending her on a pilgrimage to both find her brother and reclaim the past of herself, lost to the grinding machinery of the traditional ballet world. Dances centers women, art, power, and how we can define freedom for ourselves. One of the reasons I love book prizes is because, based on the cover, I wouldn't have bothered to read that description. But now that I've read that description, I am really interested in trying this book. Daughters by Claudia Day. So says Monica Dean, playwright, actress, and daughter to a man famous for one great novel, and in fruitless pursuit of the next, whose needs and insecurities exert an inescapable pull and extract an immeasurable toll on the women of her family. Mona, her sister, her half-sister, their mother. His infidelity destroyed Mona's childhood, setting her in opposition to a cold and cruel stepmother, who, though equally damaged, disdains for being broken. Then, just as Mona is settling into her life as an adult and fledgling artist, he begins a new affair and takes her into his confidence. Mona delights, painfully, parasitically, in his attention. When he inevitably confesses to his wife, Mona is cast as an agent of disruption, punished for her father's crimes and ejected from the family. Mona's tedious stability is thrown into chaos only when she suffers an incalculable loss, one far deeper and more defining than her family's entanglement, can she begin supplanting absent love with real love. Pushed to the precipice, she must decide how she wants to live, what she most needs to say, and the risks she will take to say it. This sounds like the description is telling us just a little bit too much. I'm already asking, why is Mona being punished by her father's sin? What's wrong with her mother? That doesn't quite make sense. What is broken with that character? Father-daughter relationships are surprisingly underexplored in literature. The effects of cheating on children and how that travels with them later in life. There's a lot of potential for this book to overcome that simply terrible cover. A lot of 4-star reviews for this book floating around too. So it sounds like if this is your type of book, and it does sound a little bit like my type of book, that it's a fairly safe read. Coleman Hill by Kim Coleman Foote. In 1916, during the early days of the Great Migration, Celia Coleman and Lucy Grimes flee the racism and poverty of their home in the post-Civil War South for the promised land of Voxer, New Jersey. But the North possesses its own challenges and bigotries that will shape the fate of the women and their families over the next 70 years. Told through the voices of 9 family members, their perspectives at once harmonious and contradictory, Coleman Hill is the penetrative multi-generational debut. Within 10 years of arriving at Vauxhall, both Celia and Lucy's husbands are dead, and they turn to one another for support in raising their children far from home. Lucy's gentleness sets Celia at ease, and Celia lends Lucy her fire when her friend wants to cower. Encouraged by their mother's friendship, their children's lives become enmeshed as well. As the children grow into adolescence, two are caught in the impulsive act of impropriety, and Celia and Lucy find themselves at irreconcilable odds over who is to blame. The ensuing fallout has dire consequences that reverberate through the next 2 generations of their family. I am always a bit hesitant with multi-generational sagas. I know a lot of people will be upset with me saying this, but I think they're really overhyped. Really a lot overhyped. The first generation of this sounds like a really interesting book, and I do worry that what happens with a lot of multi-generational sagas is that you're into that first generation, and then when they leave, when they die out, or the second generation become the central characters, my interest in the book often fades, and that does sound like this could be that sort of book. On the more positive side of things, this is called a biomythography, which is a reference to Zami by Audre Lorde, which is always appreciated. It is drawing on the author's own past, and early reviews of this book are almost exclusively 3, 4, or 5 stars. Barely a negative review in sight. Seems like a novel that will hit somewhere between safe and amazing, and let's face it, that's a free hit. So despite my caution about the multi-generational saga, this looks like very positive signs for this novel. Brotherless Night by V.V. Ganesharathan. A little over a fortnight ago, I had not heard of this book. Now it is longlisted for the 2 most prestigious book awards for women. I think the Carol Shields and the Women's Prize for Fiction agreeing on a title can only be a good thing. That double endorsement should have anybody salivating, as too should the ridiculously positive early reviews of this. If this is the first time you've come across this novel, here's the description. Jaffna, 1981. 16-year-old Sashi wants to become a doctor, but over the next decade, a vicious civil war will tear through her home and her dreams spin off course as she sees her 4 beloved brothers and their friend Q sweep up in the mounting violence. Desperate to act, Sashi accepts Q's invitation to work as a medic at a field hospital for the militant Tamil Tigers, who following years of state discrimination and violence are fighting for a separate homeland for Sri Lanka's Tamil minority. But after the Tigers murder one of her teachers and Indian peacekeepers arrive only to commit further atrocities, Sashi begins to question where she stands when one of her medical school professors, a Tamil feminist dissenter, invites her to join a secret project documenting human rights violations. She embarks on a dangerous path that will change her forever. Set during the early years of Sri Lanka's 3-decade-long civil war, Brotherless Night is a heart-rending portrait of one woman's moral journey and a testament to both the enduring impact of war and the bonds of home. This is actually the most recent book I have finished reading, and I'm still sort of digesting it, so I don't want to give you a review or a comment on it yet, but I will say that I think that the early hype around this book is quite warranted, and I expect this to be a very popular book in 2024. Between Two Moons by Aisha Abdul Gawad. It is the holy month of Ramadan, and twin sisters Amira and Lena are about to graduate high school in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn. On the precipice of adulthood, they plan to embark on a summer of teenage revelry, trying on new identities and testing the limits of what they can get away with while still under their parents' roof. But the twins' expectations of the summer of freedom collide with their older brother's return from prison, whose mysterious behaviour threatens to undo the delicate family balance. Meanwhile, outside the family apartment, a storm is brewing in Bay Ridge. A raid on a local business sparks a protest that brings the Arab community together, and a senseless act of violence threatens to tear them apart. Everyone's motives are called into question as an alarming sense of disquiet descends on the neighbourhood. With everything spiralling out of control, how will Amira and Lina know who they can trust? A gorgeously written, intimate family story with a polyphonic portrait of life under the spectra of Islamophobia. Between Two Moons challenges the reader to interrogate their own assumption, asking questions of the allegiance, faith and family and community, and what it means to be a young Muslim in America. This is another hideous cover, I hate to say, but I'm glad this book was longlisted, because it's another one that I would have ignored and maybe even vomited on. Dealing with Islamophobia, protesting twins, and Ramadan is a bit catnip for me. Another novel with predominantly 3 to 5 star reviews too, which again makes it feel like a bit of a free hit, because it's either going to be good or really good. We're just about halfway through the list, and I think now is a good time to mention the judges for this prize. The chair of the judges is Chinese-Canadian author and broadcaster Jen Sukfung Lee. She's assisted by Moroccan-American author Leila Lamani, who I think is probably the best known name among the judges, American author and professor Claire Massoud, American author Dolly Perkins Valdez, and Indigenous Canadian author Eden Robinson make up the judges. I really like that every judge is a published author. While I think that avid readers are valid choices for judges too, there is something nice about books judged by authors. And as a relatively new prize, this could be a really cool little way that the Carol Shields Prize differentiate themselves from other prizes. I think that's what we want. I think we want all of our prizes that have slightly different identities. Let's continue with the books. Loot by Tanya James. Abbas is just 17 years old when his gift as a woodcarver comes to the attention of Tipu Sultan, and he is drawn into the palace in order to build an automated giant tiger for Tipu's son, a gift to commemorate their return from British captivity. His fate and the fate of the wooden tiger he helps create will mirror the vicissitudes of nations and dynasties ravaged by wars across India and Europe. Working alongside legendary French clockmaker Lucien, Abbas hones his craft, learns French, and meets the daughter of a French expatriate. When Lucien is finally permitted to return home to Rouen, he invites Abbas to come along as his apprentice. But by the time Abbas travels to Europe, Tipu's place has been looted by British forces, and the automated tiger has disappeared. To prove himself, Abbas must retrieve the tiger from an estate in the English countryside, where it is displayed in a collection of plundered art. This is a book that I've already DNF'd. I don't remember if I bothered to review it. Sometimes I will neglect to review books I DNF if I don't have anything to say about them. But I got a quarter of the way into this book and it just wasn't gripping me. I found it a bit boring. But I know other people love this book, including Maggie O'Farrell. But there wasn't enough meat to excite me into reading the other 3/4 of this novel. You Were Watching from the Sand by Julian Lamy, a stylistic and contemporary daring collection that winds from fantastical horror to mischievous domestic realism and always keeps in its sharp, compassionate view the material, spiritual and emotional lives of Haitian people. Terrible sentence. It's a problem with reading descriptions. Sometimes somebody needed to proofread them. I'm not actually sure what that's saying, I'm sorry. It's a short story collection about Haitian people. Playful, kinetic, and devastating in turn, You Were Watching from the Sands is a collection in which Haitian men, women, and children who find their lives cleaved by the intermittently strange bite back at the bizarre with their own oddities. In Bally's, a young woman abandons her own living relatives, making a prison from the mud beside her backyard creek. In We Feel It's in Putana, Catan, a domestic child servant in the Dominican Republic tours through his own lush imagination to make his material condition more bearable. In The Oldest Sensation is Anger, a teenager invites the same-aged family friend into her apartment and uncovers a spate of disturbing secrets about her. Written with a mixture of high lyricism, absurdist comedy, and Haitian cultural witticism, this is a collection whose dynamism matches that of its characters at every beat and turn. I'm really grateful that any book prize is helping an unknown Haitian author who is pushing the envelope and testing literature. But let's face it, that sounds terrible. It sounds weird and very much not my thing. But I hope those of you who enjoy this sort of weird short story collection will pick this one up. The Future by Catherine Leroux, translated from French by Susan Oriano. In an alternate history of Detroit, the Motor City was never surrendered to the US. Its residents deal with population poverty and the legacy of racism, and strange and magical things are happening. Children rule their own kingdom in the trees, and burned houses regenerate themselves. When Gloria arrives looking for answers and her missing granddaughter, at first she finds only a hungry mouse in the derelict home where her daughter was murdered. But the neighbors take pity on her, and she turns to their resilience and impressive garden for sustenance. When a strange intuition sends Gloria into the woods of Park Rouge, where the city's orphaned and abandoned children are rumoured to have created their own society, she can't imagine the strength she will find. A richly imaginative story of community and a plea for persistence in the face of an uncertain future. The Future is a lyrical testament to the power we hold to protect the people and the places we love together. Poor to average early reviews on this one, and I can't say the description excites me. Dystopian is really hard to get right. It's a genre I love, but it also is a genre that so often disappoints me. I'm very careful about what dystopians I read, and when there's not even a hook in the description, how can there be a hook in the novel? I Have Some Questions for You by Rebecca Mackay. A successful film professor and podcaster, Brodie Kane is content to forget her past, the family tragedy that marred her adolescence, her 4 largely miserable years at the New Hampshire boarding school, and the murder of her former roommate, Talia Keith. Though the circumstances surrounding Talia's death and the conviction of the school's athletic trainer Omar Evans are hotly debated online, Brodie needs to let sleeping dogs lie. But when the Granby School invites her back to teach a course, Brodie is drawn to the case and its increasingly apparent flaws. In their rush to convict Omar, did the school and the police overlook other suspects? Is the real killer still out there? As she falls down the very rabbit holes she was so determined to avoid, Brodie begins to wonder if she wasn't as much of an outsider at Granby as she thought. If perhaps back in 1995 she knew something that might have held the key to solving the case. I've looked at this book for a long time. I looked at it when it was released. I really struggled to decide if this was one worth trying or not. And I see so many different opinions on this book from reviewers out there, and reviewers I trust. I just don't know what to think of this book. I don't see a pattern in who loves it and who hates it and who thinks it's kind of average. It just seems a bit random. I feel like you should just flip a coin, and heads you read this, tails you don't. Obviously I have not read this yet, otherwise I might be able to get you a bit more information. Then it seems a bit of a mess as to whether this is a good book or not. Whatever the case, this has certainly been successful. And if you're into gambling on whether you're going to absolutely love or absolutely hate a book, pick this one up, because it could be on either your best books of the year or your worst books of the year list. A History of Burning by Jacinta Oza. India, 1898. Pirapai is the 13-year-old breadwinner for his family when he steps into a dhow on the premise of work, only to be taken across the ocean to labour on the East African Railroad for the British. With no money or voice, but a strong will to survive, he makes an impossible choice that will haunt him for the rest of his days and reverberate across generations. His children will go on to thrive in Uganda during the waning days of British colonial rule. As the country moves towards independence and military dictatorship, Pirapai's granddaughters, sisters Lakita, Marare and Kaya, come of age in a divided nation, each forging her own path for the future. Lakita is an aspiring journalist with a fierce determination to fight for what she believes in. Mariai's ambition will take her further away from her family than she will have ever imagined, and Kaya will have to bear the weight of their secrets. Forced to flee Uganda during Idi Amin's brutal expulsion of South Asians in 1972, the family must start their lives again in Toronto. Then one day, news arrives that will make each generation question how far they are willing to go and who they are willing to defy to secure a place of their own in the world. I DNF'd this book about halfway in because it just had too many characters, too many changes of view. It was just too ambitious. I don't think it's a bad book. I personally struggle with too many characters and too many points of view. I think you probably know if that is something that bothers you or not. I thought the prose in this book was great, and there was potential for it to be a really good novel. I'm definitely interested in what she writes next. So it's a bit of a weird one for me. A Council of Dolls by Mona Susan Power. From the mid-century metropolis of Chicago to the ancestral lands of the Dakota people, to the bleak and brutal Indian boarding school, A Council of Dolls is a story of 3 women, told in part through the stories of their dolls they carried. Sissy, born 1961, Sissy's relationship with her beautiful and volatile mother is difficult, even dangerous, but her life is also filled with beautiful things, including a new Christmas present, a doll called Ethel. Ethel whispers advice and kindnesses in Sissy's ear, and in one especially terrifying moment, maybe even saved Sissy's life. Lillian, born 1925, born in her ancestral lands in the time of terrible change. Lillian clings to her sister Blanche and her doll May. When the sisters are forced to attend an Indian school far from their home, Blanche refuses to be cowed by the school's abusive nun. But when tragedy strikes the sisters, the doll May finds her way to defend the girls. Cora, born 1888. Though she was born into the brutal legacy of the Indian Wars, Cora isn't afraid of the white men who removed her to a school across the country to be civilized. When teachers burn her beloved buckskin and beaded doll Winona, Cora discovers that the spirit of Winona may not be entirely lost. This is one book I have already read, and I thought it was a really solid read. Good, but a little short of amazing. I don't think anybody who starts this book will be disappointed in it. Chrysalis by Arjuna Verghese. Genre-bending stories of transformation and belonging that centre women of colour and explore queerness, family and community. A couple in a crumbling marriage face divine intervention. A woman dies in her dreams again and again until she finds salvation in an unexpected source. A teenage misfit discovers a darkness lurking just beyond the borders of her suburban home. The stories in Chrysalis are by turn poignant and chilling, blurring the lines between the real world and the world beyond. Verghese delves fearlessly into complex intersections of family, community, sexuality and cultural expectation, taking aim at the way in which radicalized women are robbed of power and reveling in the strength and dangerous journeys they undertake to reclaim it. This is another book for me that I wish was a novel and not a short story collection, but it does sound good. The Land of Milk and Honey by C. Pam Zhang. A smog has spread. Food crops are rapidly disappearing. A chef escapes her dying career in a dreary city to take a job at a mountaintop colony, seemingly free from the world's troubles. There the sky is clear again, rare ingredients are abound. Her enigmatic employer and his visionary daughter have built a lush new life for the global elite, one that reawakens the chef to the pleasures of taste, touch and her own body. In the atmosphere of hidden wonders and cool seductive violence, the chef boundaries undergo a thrilling erosions. Soon she is pushed to the centre of a startling attempt to reshape the world far beyond the plate. Another book I DNF'd, and this is a book that is boring. That's what it is. I actually had quite a few negative things to say on the execution of this novel. Flat and underdeveloped characters, themes that just weren't explored. I've already said dystopian is a hard genre to pull off, and I'm really going to stick by that. I've attempted slightly less than half of this long list, and it is a bit of a mixed bag for me. It is catering to a wide variety of tastes, which can be intentional for any long list to make sure that there is something for every type of reader, or it can be a sign that the judges don't really agree. Personally, Dancers and Between Two Moons are the books I most want to get to. I think that Burnam Wood and Brotherless Night are two books that everybody should consider reading if they haven't already. I would be very unsurprised to see those two books shortlisted. I'd like to thank my Patreons for all of their support. We read 2 books a month. If you would like to join in and discuss books with some wonderfully intelligent people who all think about books slightly differently from one another, then you would be very welcome to join my Patreon, and your support of this channel would be greatly appreciated. I wish you all happy reading. Bye bye.